So welcome everyone. Our next session is all about advocating for your neighbors. And we're joined today by Zach Bradley, the the co-director, with me actually, of the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. Zach has a master's degree in planning in urban development and was instrumental in the recent, KMCLT's recent community bond campaign and many other things. So welcome, Zach. And
thank you. Can everyone hear me? I feel like I don't. I need this for online though, right? The microphone? Okay, yeah. So it's kind of strange to talk to a room like this. So, okay. So hi everyone. Does everyone here know where Kensington Market is? Has everyone been to Kensington Market? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, great. So we'll keep this chill and informal. The whole point of this, before I dive in further, was trying to create a space to talk about advocacy in our CLTs and trying to encourage other CLTs to, don't forget, but to keep in mind that mutual aid and advocacy should be rooted in everything we do. And as we scale and grow, that we shouldn't be afraid to continue to challenge the system at place. Because the issue we're in is not going to be solved, I think, by just carrying through the system. I think we're trying to challenge the system. And that's, as we get bigger, we're going to have to do more partnerships, enter more deals with governments, bigger contracts. And it's going to kind of lead to sometimes, maybe a desire to take on charitable routes and focus less on advocacy. And I want to make sure that we remain rooted to that. And also, for folks in the CLT space or people who are, associate members or supporters, I think we need to work together to do advocacy here. And I'll talk about that a bit here, but just, thinking about common ideas, visions, and mandates and supporting each other through that work, knowing that people are not going to speak up for us, that we need to be the ones to organize and speak up, and that there's things that we feel and see in our communities that are wrong. It's bad, But it's what are we doing about it? And then, finding those who are doing it and working together and inspiring other CLTs to do that and supporting each other. So it's whatever that looks like, right? Knowing that we're here. And so creating the space for that. And finally, hoping at the end we can just talk, because I'd love to hear what you guys feel, what I say, if you guys have projects you're working on, it could be personal, it could be with a CLT, and just talking about that, because I also want to learn, because, I don't know what's going on. We're just trying, right? So, fun outline. Yeah, so quickly talk about who we are as an organization. And then I kind of want to deviate quickly and talk about why. What does this mean for advocacy and what it's rooted in? So it's all about the land. And when we talk about land, it's all about the community land trust, And then what we're doing about it. So that's just the idea of strategies. Also, I don't know if we can get the door. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm happy to people to come in and go. And then, we'll chat. So it's about strategies, but it's actually going to be a minor focus, but we'll talk about advocacy work. So, who we are. Most of you might know who we are, but we're based in Toronto's Kensington Market. Here's our board and staff in front of the building that we own. We were incorporated in 2017, bought this building here in 2021. So this is 5456 Kensington Avenue. It's a very staple building within our neighborhood. Bought that through a mixture of government funding, private donations, vendor take-back, mortgage, traditional mortgage, and it was a result of a lot of tenant advocacy and fighting for evictions. So it's a really good story, and it's one we're trying to build off now. As an organization, we have a 9-person volunteer board of directors who guides our organization, and we've been growing in staff, going from no staff to 1 staff to 1 full-time staff to now 2 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff. Dominique is the other staff member, and Kevin is on our board. So just know there's others in the room here. Right now, we're a membership-based organization. So we have 3 tiers of memberships. So you can be a resident member, so you live in this building here. You could be a community member. That means you live and work within Kensington Market. So it's kind of like a square area. It's very clear when you're in and out of it. And you could be a supporting member. So of those 3 members, we have 500 now, which is really amazing. And we directly engage with them with like an emails newsletter that we send out once a month, which is part of our advocacy work. And right now we have 2 active volunteer committees and a few different advisory committees. So these are spaces for these members who are not board members to contribute to the organization and speak to our board. Our work includes advocacy, mutual aid, and long-term stewardship of land. And excitingly so, we're in the process of acquiring a second property, and if all goes well, hopefully a third property soon. So it's amazing. It's really exciting time for us, and the work we do from the advocacy is somewhat directly related to this next purchase we're going to do. That purchase was done through a donation we received. How do we receive a donation? We receive a donation because people know who we are. How do they know who we are? It's because we do advocacy work. So it's like these things are all tied together is what we're trying to get at here. So if you go on our website, you can read about our mission, but I just wanted to read it out loud that, we seek land use for local community benefit in Kensington Market. So we're speaking about the community. And it's nice to have a bit of a more clarity to that. So it's like we're looking for provision of affordable housing and stable commercial spaces. So we talk a lot in this space about affordable housing, but a big component of who we are is also commercial space. When we think about Kensington Market, it's a mixed-use neighborhood. Mixed use meaning that there's residential and commercial. It's really, you can spit or throw a stone or however you want to stay, and you're going to hit a commercial space in Kensington Market. You can't pull them apart, so it's kind of embedded to who we are, but it's a very unique feature to us as a land trust compared to other land trusts in Canada and America. We want to maintain the historical built form and eclectic mixed-use nature that characterizes the neighborhood. If you come through Kensington Market, you know there's a special vibe there. There's a feeling to it, so we want to keep that alive, keep that eclecticness, keep that like variety and diversity of folks. And then, continue the presence of different cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds in both our residents and our businesses. So we're not just trying to focus on people who live there. We want people who can work there too. So this is our building here. I like this shot. It gives you a good kind of view of what Kensington feels like. You can see here, this is a cold winter day, so not much is happening. But if you come during the summer, there'll be patios here, maybe some vendors out here. These are shops here. You have restaurants in the back here. You have residential upstairs. This is our building here. It's going to quickly just talk a bit about, why? Like, what does this mean, right? Why are we doing this? The land. It's funny, this was supposed to be like a massive, the land, and like I noticed that earlier in Nat's presentation that I got really small too, so it has a purpose, I guess, still. It's just funny that way. It's not as important. So I want to emphasize the land. So when we're talking about Kensington Market, we're talking about Toronto, we're talking about Ontario, we're talking about Canada. And when we talk about these spaces, we're talking about land, and we're talking about the financialization of land, we're talking about assets. And we're talking about a crisis of affordability in our neighborhood. And we talk a lot about how it's not really a crisis. That what we're experiencing here is the system working as it should. This is a very well-designed, oiled machine that is about extracting wealth and creating money out of land. This is, it's like we don't think about air, we don't think about the sky, we don't think about the moon being an asset that we can sell, but we just normalize that it's land here that we sell. Of course you buy and sell land here, right? And it's not how it should be, and it's not how it was for a very long time. Like our land was home to people for a long time, and they still are here today. So this is the land acknowledgement on our website. So we acknowledge that we're on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat and Putun First Nations. We're home today to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis folks. We're governed in Toronto by Treaty 13 and the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. So we have existing agreements, we have existing treaties. That doesn't mean that they're valid. And I think that us as an organization, we think about what we're trying to correct is we're trying to reverse this. We're trying to go back to when at a time when we didn't think of land as an asset, when we thought about it in terms of community, in terms of sharing. And I think that itself is such a hard thought process for us to change as our society. And that's something that I think about a lot through this work, is that we act through the private market. We're trying to buy land through the private market forces. But by doing that, we're trying to remove it from the private market. And it's not perfect, We're not changing title. We're not changing the way the system works. We're still operating from a colonial mindset. But I really do hope that as we slowly progress through our work, we can return this land to the community. And I think that is an act of resistance, and that's an act of solidarity. I think we still have work to do as an organization of how we speak to and work with our Indigenous neighbors and our, in our community. But I think that act of removing the land and bringing it back to community is super, super important, and it's tied to everything we do going forward, right? So just wanting to emphasize that we're not in a crisis. Everything's perfect in terms of this. If this was a stock market, everyone would be like, oh wow, good job. The TSX is doing great. The market for housing is great. It's gone up an insane amount of money. Everyone made a lot of money, right? So I think we're trying to challenge that idea about the land. And so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about Kensington Market and just how it became to be. And it was an area of rivers, and it was an area that was not cut into these tiny little blocks that are become pieces of assets we pay $2 million for. This is one of the first plans for Bellevue by the Denison Estate. One of our streets is still called Denison. With the property we own, it's on here now. So it's just interesting to see the evolution of where we are. You can see here they're just still putting the streets in. You can still hear it's still so empty, right? But it slowly became this, and it slowly became the photo you saw earlier. And the impacts of this are felt. We talk a lot about the feelings of colonization. We feel them too. We feel this into our streets, and we see the impact of what this means. When we create an asset, financialized community, this is what it looks like. This is what happens to businesses over the last 15 years. You see residential rents going up 98%. You see 10-year wait lists for any sort of social housing. You see that renters, on average, are paying more than homeowners for their basic income. It doesn't make sense. You see that we're losing 15 existing affordable units for every new purpose-built rental built. So every time they say, hey, we're building new housing is going to fix it. No, it's not. We just lost 15 as that happened. So we're actually digging a hole deeper and deeper because we keep thinking through this process that we're going to solve it that way. And we see our businesses being pushed out. This is one that was here, we like to bring it up a lot, but it was, for 3 decades, it was an operation in the community. All of a sudden, one day, the landlord realized, hey, we can make more money. They don't care. So then rent goes up $3,000, they get pushed out. They had to retire. They were there for 3 decades, and they've retired now, and they're gone. And we lost a health food store in our community. Small again. So I wanted to say then, we're talking about the land, and then, if we're bringing the land out of this financialized community or financialized mindset, we want to bring it into the community. Easy to say community, hard to actually define and work through it, right? So that's something that we as an organization are trying to figure out and work more on. So here's a photo of Kensington Market, some regular types of businesses and buildings we have here. As an organization, we've developed a new model where we've created a co-executive director model. So I've become one co-director, and Dominique is the other co-director. And we've done this as a way to ensure that we can keep expanding and growing our organization, but we don't lose our foot in our understanding to the community. We want to be representative of the community. We want to work for the community and be with the community. We don't want to become an organization that just plows ahead with a model of, number of units is the most important thing, without actually caring for what the community wants. So when we talk about stewarding land, taking these things off the private real estate market, returning to the community, we're trying to work on that next stage of growing that understanding of what community is and how do we do it. And I think advocacy, this is where it's all coming together, advocacy is a major part of that. Advocacy is standing up for your neighbors and for your community. Advocacy is when your neighbors know of the Kensington Market Community Land Trust as them. Maybe they're a member, maybe they're not, but they know that they can come to us and speak to us. They're a worker who's been unfairly compensated. They're a tenant who's being pushed out. They're a business that has their rent jacked up. They're someone who's dealing with an encampment issue. Maybe their encampment's being pushed out. It's like there's a lot of different ways that you can be a community member and you can look to us and we can fight for you. And I hope that other CLTs can take that on. And we, as a land-owning entity, have a deeper role now in the community. We're not going anywhere, which is amazing to know. That like when you own the land, you're in the community, and it's like we're stabilized, we're there, and we're going to be fighting for generations. Our terms of the city is a 100-year agreement, so I'll be dead, and they'll still be there, which is really cool to think. So yeah, this is where we're getting to now, is about how do we, when we speak of community and we fight for community, what does it look like? What are some strategies? So Kensington Market has a very long history of community activism and community organizing. Both Kevin and Dominique are part of this for many years, and it goes beyond that. So I don't want to come up here and say that just because I've been here for the last year that these are work that just started with me. I'm continuing something and I'm building off it and I'm learning, and I'm grateful to be able to work with you two to understand this and learn more about it. So I just like to see these ones are talking about short-term rentals and preserving Kensington Market. Is that Michael? No? Oh, okay. So this is, two posters that we have here. This is about here for a long time, not just a good time. This is about ghost hotels. Does everyone know what a ghost hotel is? So, exactly, yeah. So a ghost hotel is when you buy, say, an apartment or, a house, you evict everyone, you turn it into little hotel units or Airbnb, then you put it on booking.com or something for like a self-contained apartment, or, those spaces where you go, everything's from IKEA, there's no kitchen, it's really weird, maybe there's like a coffee maker, and you're just like uncomfortable, but you paid $170 to stay there. That's a ghost hotel, and we have a lot of them in our neighborhood, and we've been pushing back for years on them, and it's been a very uphill battle. So I'm going to talk about strategies, but in reality, I'm talking about things that we've done, and I want to just build upon that. Like, this is not new. These are things that we've been doing for decades in the market. So talking about strategies, finally. So one of them that I've been thinking about was the idea of working with local media, or it could be international media, national media. It could be a good thing and a bad thing. Media can misconstrue things. They cannot understand things. We talk to journalists sometimes, and we read their story after and being like, did they have any idea what they're talking about? They're writing 4 stories a day, and they come into your neighborhood, and they get your name wrong, and they get these things wrong, right? So it can be a very frustrating process to work with local media. But I also very much encourage all CLTs to leverage media, and you can use them for what you want to do. Media sometimes come in, they swoop in, and they use you. And I did my undergrad in journalism, so it was like I did a lot of using of people. You go into a community, you're just looking for the quote. I got it. Okay, thanks. I got my story. I'm done. I don't care anymore. I'm on something else. That story's online forever, and it really screws them up. But on the inverse, it's like you can work with the media. So it's like I was trying to say here, you can use it to amplify your message. Good stories can be mutually beneficial. Journalism relies on news stories. They relies on novelty. They rely on interesting ideas. We were talking about the ideas of stunts, of big messages, of advocacy, of protests, of making something that's newsworthy that helps amplify your goal. It's also good for them. So you can establish partnerships with media to see how you can, both get something that works for you. Traditional media is really important as a level of legitimacy. We can post something on our social media. I can make an Instagram story or on TikTok, We can put out a press release, or we can, have a thing in our community. But sometimes, say, a counselor, they're not on my social media. I don't think the mayor or a city councilor wakes up in the morning and be like, I wonder what's going on in Kensington Market's Instagram today, They just don't do that. Maybe they do, I don't know. But they look at the traditional media. That if a story comes out in the Globe and Mail or the CBC and it gets shared a lot, someone's talking about it. And a lot of those decision making are a bit older and are more, attuned to the radio or more attuned to TV. So it's like getting news coverage on like a CBC at nighttime is actually still very, very, very important. And I think it takes also the message away from you and into someone else's hands, which can be bad because you need to be careful they don't misconstrue your narrative. But I think it also be really important because then it amplifies your voice. You can say that, hey, like I got interviewed in this story about something, the land trust is saying this. It makes it seem as if like this is bigger than who we are, even though we were the ones maybe to contact the media and say, hey, we should do a story on this. Hey, we can be interviewed for it. Hey, we'll talk to you about it. We'll give you a quote. And hey, you should probably talk to ABC also. Here's a community organizer. Here's a small business. Here's a person. There's your story. It's prepackaged for the journalists. Of course, they're going to write it now. But then it doesn't look like we did it. But in reality, that was our story. So I think there's a way you can use the local media to really push your narrative and get these policies going on. And this is how you change policy. This is how when, you can ask and email your counselor. It's all very direct, Here, here, here. The second there's an article comes out in CBC, the counselor has to address it. Then they have other people talking about it. It's kind of, you're taking individual conversation, you're putting it public. So that's something that we've been focusing on the last bit, and I think we'll continue to do. Here's a photo of Dominique being interviewed for CTV. Dominique speaks French, and that's been a very helpful asset as well. So I wanted to say, understand your role in the media. There's always a need for French media in Toronto and wherever you are. Radio Canada, other groups, like they also need to fill their quota. And sometimes it's difficult if you're not in a very francophone community. So I think it's been an amazing asset for us to tap into that community as well. So it's also think about other languages. Do people on your board speak a second language? Is there a Chinese language newspaper in your area? I don't know, does someone speak Spanish, Portuguese? Like, what are those communities and how can you tap into them? Because those are also people who live in the community, and then maybe those people that we're not talking to a lot. So one thing we did recently was dealing with these ghost hotels. There's one behind us that's been operating, and it's very clear it's illegal. Toronto has bylaws that says you cannot rent out a room on a short-term rental unless you live in the space. It's very strict regulations, but as you'll learn with regulations, it means nothing if you don't enforce them, and they're not enforced. So we saw this building. It was occupied for a while as residential units. They were evicted, a very terrible process of how they were pushed out, short-term rentals, and for years it's been operating. So I complained to the city. I reached out via our platform 311, which is like where you can submit complaints. I said, illegal ghost hotel in my neighborhood. Nothing happens. They follow up and say, here it is again, right? And then I just kept bugging them every few weeks, being like, when are you going to respond? And then they connected me with the licensing department that does gives the tickets and the enforcement. And then finally got on the call with the head of the MLS, who's the Municipal Licensing and Standards of Toronto, so the top person, and he's like, oh yeah, we just can't give a ticket. We don't know if it's actually a short-term rental. So then I sent them the booking.com listing saying, here it is here, this is it. And he goes, oh, okay, but we can't tell if anyone's actually staying there. But I said, there's reviews. Like, someone stayed there yesterday. And they said, well, no, we don't know if that's real or not. So that you're just like, okay, like, do I need to give you, if I go there and book a spot and give you confirmation, is that proof that it's a spot? And he said, I can't encourage you to do that, but that'd be true. So we booked a night there at this at this short-term rental. And as we're going through this, we're talking, and I don't know how it happened, but then we got in contact with CTV News, and they said, why don't we come with you when you book the night? So we came in, and he brought this little spy camera on his jacket, and then he filmed me going in, and we walked in the building, and we interviewed some other tenants there. Here's me inside the room. It looks like a nice hotel room, right? This is one of the old apartments. And then, we submitted to the city the next day and said, here's your proof, let me know what you can do now. And then the same day we ran the story. And the story was good because it went on CTV News, national. I remember I had my mom calling me being like, I just saw you on TV, like really funny experience. Or a lot of random people reaching out to me being like, it turns out people watch the news still at nighttime, I don't, right? But, and then that led to this whole conversation that opened up. A case was started for this file, and then they went through the process of charging the owner of the space. From this, we got connected to our MPP, Jessica Bell. We got connected to the City of Toronto through some of the councillors about wanting to do research onto this, and we got involved in being part of a conversations on how to change the bylaws in the city. Just amplified to a space where it was I was commenting on stuff, being like, I just booked a night somewhere. You know what I mean? But it was because of this, right? No one was listening. No one was doing anything until we put the pressure on the city. It's very frustrating still, though, because at the end of the day here, the case was dropped. I provided all the information possible. I found out who actually operates the entire site. I sent it to the city. I went to the licensing. I gave my deputation, gave all the information, and it turns out at the end of the day that the case couldn't go forward because there wasn't enough evidence. I don't know how that's not enough evidence, right? I don't know what else they needed, right? So that's something that we're trying to figure out now, and I'm back in touch with the same journalist, actually. I saw him last week, and he was like, we should do a follow-up story now about the process and why it's not working. So we're hoping that the story can continue, and then it can keep shining light about the broken-ass system, because a lot of people in the city didn't know. When I talked to the city councilor, not our councilor, but the one next to us, she was like, oh, but 311 says they closed 90% of their applications. Of the complaints they got, 90% of them were solved. No, I said, this one was solved too. They solved this one 4 times before they actually responded to me, because they look at it and they go, oh, that's not possible to fix. Solved. And I don't think anyone had talked in the city yet about what that means to solve a 311 case. So this one hopefully opened up discussion in the City of Toronto saying 311's closing all these cases, but they don't actually do anything about it. Here's talking about Radio Canada. I wanted to show this, Dominique, about just how we're amplifying other voices and working with the media. And this is talking about our community bond campaign. And it's accessing a whole area of the city that we wouldn't have access to in ourselves, right? And these are folks that are, can then invest and can be engaged. So just thinking about who on your board, who on your staff, who on your volunteers can you engage with for that? Okay, social media. So this is our Instagram page. We use Instagram a lot. I don't have TikTok yet, but I'm interested to see if people would recommend it. I know Anika from Little Jamaica Community Land Trust is like the king or the queen of that, and so we need to take some notes from her. But our social media is very interesting, where our Instagram page has 1,500 people. We only have 500 members, so it's 3 times the reach that we have from our social media platform, which is pretty wild. And if like some of the posts we get up to like, you know, sometimes the engagement for some months is up to like 15,000 or 18,000 people are seeing what we're posting, which is crazy because it's just from my phone. I just like take a photo and I post it, and then all of a sudden I'm reaching 15,000 people. You're like, that's weird, right? We have people messaging us all the time with like information, ideas, wanting to just talk to us. This one woman always sends me cat memes, and I just like give it a heart, you know, like, yeah, I'm here, I hear you. But like our social media posts now can lead to action as well. It can lead to media articles and people taking their own calls to action. So that's an interesting thing for us now, is we can just post something, and I think media are watching us and they'll pick it up. And then also we can do things like, just an example here was, this was one building that's been sitting vacant in our community for a very long time. And then I posted on our social media, I said, you know, write to 311, which is our licensing area, and then write to our counselor, this building's been vacant, they should be paying a tax. And I don't think they're paying a tax, as they say they're under construction, but it's been under construction for 4 years. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can write to the city councilor and I can write to 311 about that. I'm one person, or I'm one organization. But when we get 20, 30, 40 people messaging me after me saying, I did it, I reached out, it's amazing to see that, like, instead of me reaching out, we had, I think, 12 or 15 people eventually reach out for that one. So it can really grow your impact. And I think people give a shit. People want to do something in their community, but they don't know how. They're busy with their work, they have kids, they have a life, but they feel something's wrong. So it's nice when you, very easy, on their platform, say, hey, here's one thing you can do today. Can you write to this person? Can you share this post? Can you do that? It's very simple, right? And I think it's important because it's actually really, really important. It has a really big impact, and it really helps us. So there's a mutual benefit, like mutual gain from that for both their feelings and our feelings too. So, and I think understanding each channel is something that I've been trying to understand more. I didn't have social media before I started this position, so it's been kind of getting back into Instagram. I see a lot of posts being like, oh, this is how a millennial posts, this is for how Gen Z posts. And I'm like, oh, fuck, like, I'm definitely a millennial, you know? Like the way they're like, do you angle your text this way and do that? I'm like, I do that. So I'm trying to understand how to operate on Instagram better, but then understanding that we shouldn't like make our Instagram posts everything. Like, when to use a story, when to use Instagram, when do you post on Facebook versus a post on Twitter? And like you know what I mean? I feel like an Instagram story matches a Twitter post. An Instagram post matches like a Facebook post or a part of our newsletter. Like, these are our big calls to action. We don't want to overfill this and bombard people's feeds. So trying to understand that, it's actually, I think, really, really important. And this is something that I really lean on, as our Instagram, to connect with our people and make an impact. So here's an example of one post we made. One of our board members had said she saw on an Instagram story that this donut shop in our community was getting their rent increased. That's a major issue for us. Then we find out that they're getting the rent increase by the city of Toronto. What the way? Yeah, you're just like idiots. And then we find out that the city of Toronto, a few days earlier, had made a motion about commercial rent increases. Councillors grandstanding, being like, oh, we need to cap commercial rent increases in the city of Toronto because our businesses are faulting. And then the city the same week has increased the rent here. So we called out the hypocrisy of this in our post here, being like, this is what they're doing. This is what the rent's being increased by. And Dominique and I were talking about this earlier, is through the post, we were able to give exact numbers. Like, this is exactly how much the rent wasn't going up by. This is exactly how much Green P, who operates the city of Toronto, their parking authority, operates the commercial space. This is how much money they made last year. This parking garage makes millions of dollars per year, but they want to increase it by $4,000 for this small unit. Just like, I think providing the context of the exact numbers can really get people to see, like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is absurd that they're doing this. Yeah, this is just a photo I took on my phone. This is me maybe doing a few hours of research, reading through some Green P stuff, making a post, and then look at it. We have 300 likes, tons of comments, and it got picked up by BogTO, which is the most respectful journalism platform in Toronto. And then from there, it was picked up by CBC. And then we went in front of CBC. We spoke to them in English and in French, did both the interviews, and then now it's like, then everyone's talking about it. And I see it on Reddit, I see it through things, and then it's talking at councils, and you know the councilor is seeing this now, because the councilor got interviewed for it. So she's on there now saying, has to comment to it, right? So rather than me reaching out to the counselor saying, what do you think about this? You have a journalist reaching out, and it's on record now. So it's outside of our emails, it's in the public. So I think that another example of working with a journalist, but we didn't have to do them. They approached us. We just posted on our social media. This is one we did a few days ago. I don't know if you guys have seen in Toronto, we're having the safe injection sites are being sadly removed in our city. We have a provincial government that, I don't even want to get started on it, but they, then CBC wrote an article saying how the neighborhood's divided on this issue. We were confused. We were like, the neighborhood is not divided. We're very supportive of this. So this was an opportunity for us to use our social media through a very quick post. This took me, 30 seconds, 40 seconds to write a post like this? But we have 15,000 views, and it really got a lot of engagement. A lot of people were seeing it, and I think it was a very good opportunity to call out CBC directly and to put it into the community to say, hey, this is what this looks like. This is what our community really thinks. And I think using our platform is an important thing that we can do, that we have a following and we have an ability to speak for the community, and I think using it as an opportunity to call it out is important.
Otherwise, it doesn't work for the feed.
That's okay. I'm a reformed Twitter user. I'm curious, Kensington Market verified account, I assume they've paid for that verification now, tweeted it originally. I'm just curious about kind of the dynamics between the original and then your response. We are also from a community that some people maybe have different ideas about what should happen in the community and say public things and then how we respond. So I'm just curious kind of what the personal dynamics might be between the original and yours.
Yeah, I'm not sure who they are actually, this Kensington Market verified page.
Nobody knows in the community.
One thing we were going to talk about, and it's a good point to bring it up, is that it's really easy to create a community organization. We have so many in Kensington Market, right? So it's like when we speak for the community, media loves to find someone to fill that void, kind of what I was saying earlier. You're a journalist. This journalist here got sent to Kensington Market. They walked in front of a school. They said, are you worried about the safe injection site nearby? Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. I'm pretty worried. Yeah, I got kids here. And they're like, community is divided now, right? And it's like they got their quote, right? Or maybe they'll reach out to one organization that actually is just one person who lives in a basement. They just posted it, and it's like now the community's on this, right? So I think that we as an organization need to be confronting this and being out there a lot to say, we are an organization that has 500 members. We are an organization that you can see our followers, right? We are an organization that's been around since 2017. We're organized. We speak, and we can't speak for the whole community, but we definitely represent the community. And we'll challenge the notion that these other people are speaking for the community. Communities are always divided. It's okay, but it's in this situation, it really wasn't the case. Advocacy takes time. I'm going to speak a bit faster. This is a parking lot in our neighborhood. About, I want to say, 2018, 2017, KMCLT began pushing for affordable housing on this site. Holding community vision exercises, got initial movement from the city council to dedicate this site to become affordable housing, but then kind of nothing happened for a long time. It stalled, but I think as the community continued to push on that, continued to fight for this, and pretty happy to note that in 2024, just a few months ago, the site was approved to be developed. They put an RFP to say, we're going to build affordable housing here. We need an operator who's going to operate it. We applied, and we got it. So now we're going to be helping in this process of building 78 affordable units on a parking lot. And it's, as it happened, we were all excited and talking about it, but we're also being like, hey, this is a long time coming, right? So I think this was a good lesson for me as someone who's newer to the organization that you might not get your initial wins right away, but you need to be diligent. You need to keep pushing. You need to hold on to your principles. And I appreciate the way KMCLT did it is they created community principles, and every time they had a conversation, they went back to those principles. We said this in 2018. We said this in 2018. Here it is here. And it shows that you don't give up and you keep pushing on. And I think that was a great opportunity to see where we are now. So yeah, here's the post we put for this. A lot of excitement. This is the sign that what's happening. So it's amazing for the community because people have been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this for years. One thing that we've been doing is working with our politicians. I don't know if anyone knows in our community, this is our counselor here, Diane Sachs. controversial person. So there's been difficulties to work with them, maybe compared to other counselors that we've had in the past. But I think for the benefit of our community, you need to be able to work with all levels of government for advocacy work. It doesn't mean you can't critique your elected officials. And Dominique and I were talking earlier, and she made a good point that, you know, you shouldn't mix up a relationship with a counselor with your relationship with the entity they represent. So if it's a politician, a counselor, even someone working for like a bank or something like that, like there's the systems that you're talking to, there's those things, and there's the person. So you might have a really good relationship with your counselor, but that doesn't mean you can't critique the City of Toronto, because they're just a person that works for the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto doesn't have feelings. It's a thing that exists that doesn't have feelings, and it'll eat you up. So I think you need to continue to push against that, but you can have good relationship with your counselor. And on the inverse, you can have a really bad relationship, or not bad, but you can really dislike a counselor, but understand that they are an agent of the state that you need to work with. So I think for us, it's like having to swallow a bit of pride to talk with our counselor, because she is the representative for us, and she will help us get things done, and we have to go through them because that's the system at B. So I think here you can see we have our Mayor, Olivia Chow, our counselor, and our MPP, Jessica Bell. So this is at our launch of our community bond campaign. Really helpful to have them all there. They all spoke, they all gave support, and I think now we're in good relationships with all three of them. And I know all three of them would support us if we need something. Even though I'd say if you look at values of who we are between us and our counselor, we're very different in our personal values, maybe in our approaches, but I think there's a lot of like support to find what we want right now from them, and I think that's the best for the community. I don't like having to be that kind of person to have the conversation, but I think having to put that aside for advocacy is really important, and that's something I've felt like I've seen among CLTs where if someone doesn't fully agree, shunned. They're not being invited. We're not talking to them. We're going to openly blast them. We don't need to work with them. But I don't think that's the way forward. That's my opinion. I don't think we can do that. I think we have to sadly make those calls and make those concessions for the betterment of our community. That's something that we're doing. And here's a fun example of it. Oh, also, sorry, yeah. Focus on shared goals too, because maybe the counselor A, B, C, D, E you don't agree with, but F is something that you can agree with. Our counselor is very much into environmental stuff. So it's like thinking about how do we find something that's focused on sustainability that aligns with what we want. I don't think she cares so much about affordability, but maybe she cares about sustainability. So we can find common alignment there. And it doesn't matter who the counselor is. You're going to find something aligned and start thinking about, even as elections change, who's the next person coming in? What are the shared values you can find, right? Rather than completely shunning these people. So this is a council motion about the parking lot that we're talking about since 2018. This is her tweet. Yeah, great news after much hard work with my strong support. Affordable housing coming to Kensington Market. This is from our counselor. A few times she said this. Oh, because of me, you had this. And I posted on LinkedIn and I was like, congratulations to the Land Trust for getting this done. The very first comment was, you're welcome. Or it was something like that. It was like, thanks to my help, or I'm happy I could make this happen. You know what I mean? It was very, very funny. And it was like, oh, my personal LinkedIn. That's weird, right? But it was like, so it's like giving them the space, and their emotions did help things go through. But you know what I mean? Is it true to say that if it was up to them? No. But I think that like they need a win. They need they need to make an announcement. This is an announcement that helps them. It helps us. At what point doesn't matter, right? It does no good for us to call out this being like, actually, this, that, this,
Just to add, I'd actually claim that one as an additional win because we had to drag her kicking. Thank you, sorry. Just to add, in this case, it's an additional win because we had to drag her kicking and screaming to support that project. Her starting position 3 years ago was very negative about our potential role in doing this, and now she's taking credit for making it happen. So, I mean, I quietly take double credit for that victory.
Another one was finding your allies. So I think a lot of advocacy work we do, we're really pushing. We have our values. We know what we're going for. But then I'm trying in my last year here to find who are the people that are also doing this work. Maybe we don't need to be one yelling to the clouds every day. Maybe there's someone else that's already yelling at the clouds, and I can just let them yell for me, or we can work with them to yell, right? So trying to find out who those people are, and sometimes it might not seem off the get-go you're likely allies, but it takes time to to go to conferences, to go to protests, to go to shared areas together and find someone else who's also doing that work and then working together. This was an event that we hosted last week in Kensington Market, and it's with this group called Better Way Alliance, and they're focused on good quality work and jobs in Ontario. They're amazing people. And we came into contact with them a few months ago. I don't know if they reached out or if they saw one of our stories. They reached out to you. And then we had talked about, could we do a shared event? Could we talk about, small business advocacy? And then we're talking about maybe is it community wealth building? Like, what do we want to talk about? And we had all these ideas. And we ended up kind of having this like kind of ragtag event of like small business owners, community activists. We spoke at it. They spoke at it about commercial rights. They're doing a lot of amazing work about trying to fight for a commercial bill of rights to block unfair commercial rent increases. So they're an amazing organization. And yeah, then we filled this bar up in Kensington, and we had an amazing night of speakers. And that was just a good thing to happen, and it was just because we had bumped into each other, or they had reached out, and we had that support. So now it's like we know that they're there. They're fighting on the commercial advocacy front. We're also fighting on the commercial advocacy front, but it does feel nicer to know that they're there as well, and they're doing that space, and we can support their work, and we can work together. And it gives more support. Anytime I write something, they can write a letter of support. I can amplify them. They can amplify us. And if we get a bunch of us kind of doing that together, it really makes us feel like there's a stronger movement rather than just one person on the distance. Yeah, here's a cutout of your face, Dominique. But yeah, this is the night, and it was really good. The last one was the idea of all kind of returning full circle is rooting yourself in the community. Advocacy needs to come from within. So I really think it's important to be attending local events, meeting with your neighbors, shopping with your local shops. Like I'm trying my best to embed myself through that space, A lot of times these things you find out by just getting your hair cut in the community or ordering a coffee or getting your groceries there and just having a slow conversation about the shop owner or talking to the person who's sitting on the stoop smoking a cigarette and having a conversation about their week. Because that's how news travels, and that's how, slowly but surely I think we're trying that to continue to have these conversations with people, tell you, we're with the Land Trust. This is what we do, and rooting yourself that way. And you can hear slowly but surely through the community what you're kind of feeling, right? You can get a sense or a vibe or a pulse what's going on. If everyone's talking to you about this one thing, it probably wouldn't make sense for me to turn around and be like, oh, the community doesn't like that, or the community likes that. It's like you can kind of know what they're saying that way, and it can help guide it, It's not like definitive statistical knowledge being like, I talked to 14 baristas this week, and therefore the community wants this. But it also, like, if you talk to all the baristas in the Kensington Market and all the people outside smoking cigarettes, and they all don't like something, it probably is wrong for you to think that they all like it, right? So it helps root yourself in the community that way. Ensure your organization's listening to and reflects your community. And yeah, community's messy, but it's like, it's who we are, right? It's impossible to think that we're gonna always speak for the whole community. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to be messy, but I think that's the beauty of it as well. So, and I had one more here that I wanted to say, because I think this is the end. One thing was, I think we need to act bigger than who we are. I did this a lot when I first started, where I was like, oh, hi, I'm Zach. I work for a small community organization. And Dominique's like, we're not small. We have 500 members. We have this history in the community. We fight a lot. Like, we own a building. Like, we're not small. Right? And I think that's something that I'm trying to get better at is like not being so humble, being like, hi, like I work for the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. We're a major organization in downtown Toronto that's, focused on this and that, and we're fighting for this, and we'll speak on this, we'll speak on that. Because I think it's important to stand up because other groups will fill that void. We have people that are really against encampments in our community, and they formed a community organization, and they speak to the media, and they pressure our councillor. We found out it's just one person, and they're parading that they're a community organization. So it's like us trying to be humble and not wanting to make a stir. It's not helping anyone. We need to stand up and say and fight for that. So I think CLTs across Canada, every year we have more and more come up. And I think, are you incorporated? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? Do you have a board? Do you have memberships? Like, I think you're a big organization and you should be at the table. You should be speaking. You should be deputating. You should be going to any opportunity you can and speak up. And it gives you, I think, a bit more of, people listen to you more. You're more aware rather than say, hey, I'm John and I'm from the community. You say, hey, I'm John and I'm from this place. Even if it's just a few of you who have made this organization together, it really creates, I think, a feeling of like awareness and legitimacy to you and your organization. And your community needs that, especially communities that have been marginalized for years, especially communities that have been pushed aside. People have been speaking for them for so long. These larger organizations speak on behalf of you. And I think you need to stand up and say, no, I'm from this community. And I love working with Anika. We're from the Little Jamaica Community Land Trust. And it's like constantly at these spaces, constantly saying that and constantly representing our community because our community's been looked over for so long. So I think that's really important that we need to act bigger than who we are and to really stand up and fight that. So that's all I have to say. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, let me know. That one's big. There we go. See? the Q&As follow.
I had to just, I'll circulate with the microphone, but one thing I did want to say is the way that that happened with the hotel, the ghost hotel, is actually through Airbnb. So usually, you know, CLTs work on multiple fronts of multiple issues, and there's national or provincial organizations that are single-focused issues. So the Better Way Alliance, for example, is focused on commercial rent. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, let's work together, because we can provide that flavor, good news, bad news story, but inserting yourself into a larger single issue organization, you know, creating that alliance can be really, really impactful. So questions then?
I wanted to once again, thank you for your work. It is absolutely amazing. I am not from Toronto, but when I told my friends that, oh, I work at a CLT, everybody was like, oh, do you know the Kensington Market CLT and the Parkdale? And I'm like, how do you know that? But like, they're not even from those areas, and everybody, at least that my friends that are from Toronto, know about you guys. So your advocacy is working. But I wanted to ask about other forms of advocacy, more in terms of like partners with like academics, like researchers advocacy, because I know like Parkdale has like some research stuff that they do, and just wanted to ask, because like that's what advocacy looks like to me. I am working with a group that wants to build more student housing, and I'm currently researching student housing, so I wanted to see ways that that could work together.
Yeah, I have some thoughts, but I think Dominique will also have some thoughts. Like, I guess first I'd say that, yeah, we do work with academics in our community. We've had a long history with the University of Toronto through various like student placements. We're part of a research cluster right now. It's a 7-year SSHRC funded program that we're kind of being mobilized with that, and it's a mixture of, you know, academics and practitioners. We're part of the balanced supply of housing. So we've been to their last few sessions talking about, you know, eviction data, looking through that. So I think we've been actively involved with academics in the community. I think that like my gut reaction sometimes is that it can be a bit, as you know, it's not no surprise, it'd be a bit extractive sometimes, or it's like these people come in, they want to write, they want to take, or student placement sometimes can be a bit more of a burden on us rather than a benefit. But I think, yeah, we're involved in that, and then I really appreciate what Parkdale does about the way they formalize their reports. Like I think I have, Josh, the report they did recently, and it's beautiful the way they did that, and that's something that I think we want to explore more as we have a co-director model now about doing more community-based research. And we've learned so much, and we've done so much over the years. But I think, Dominique, you made a good point about it before, about being, we've done so many things that are implicitly known now, but how do we explicitly say them? How do we show our work, right? And we have a website, but it's actually, there's not much on it. We've done some YouTube videos, which have been really helpful. But yeah, how do we make that community-based research is the next step for us, because I think that's a good way to change policies too. But I don't know if you had more comments.
I have a little bit of caution around advocacy with academics, because it's very useful to have, like they can, first of all, you should be reaching out to an academic. Always be cautious when they're reaching out to you, and have a sort of filter so that it's not an extractive relationship. But just having had the experience of working with a group, and then we're like, we need you to come and show the data to back us up. And they're like, oh, we don't do that. You know, so I have a little bit of caution, but using research, community research, and creating the kind of partnerships, and just to plug the next session, which will be about that, about research. But, you know, if you have the right researchers and the right relationship, which we extraordinarily had through Susanna Bunce and Kuni Kamizaki, where we were able to hire our first development manager, I guess, when we absolutely needed her. So it can be a really productive relationship, but it is a bit like the media. You have to have some degree of caution, I think.
I was wondering how you are deciding around what to advocate for, especially as maybe your profile is growing, and requests that you may get from other community members to advocate, on their issues. And as an organization, are you, do you want to keep like a very narrow focus in terms of the advocacy that you do, or are you opening it up more broadly?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and something that we discuss sometimes. Like, where do we focus our energy and our time, right? Sometimes it feels like you're being pulled in many ways, and sometimes maybe an issue comes up and it doesn't feel like, oh, that's directly involved with what we do. But when you break it down and see who it impacts or where it goes, you realize that it is part of the larger mandate, right? And the mandate at the beginning kind of talk about mixed use, affordable housing, commercial businesses, eclectic, mixed use, diversity in our neighborhood. So anything, they're very generic, very broad. It can be generic. So I think a lot of things can fit under that umbrella. But I don't think we have maybe a for sure, at least my opinion, a for sure way of figuring that out. It's like having our social media platform is nice because maybe we can make people reach out a lot, be like, can you amplify this event for us? Can you share this thing? Can you like this for us, right? So then we can do things like, oh, I'll put that on our Twitter, or I'll make an Instagram story. Like we do Instagram stories all the time for things, right? But then it's like, oh, we should make a post about this, or we should put out a newsletter about this, or we should actually dedicate time to doing something like this, that might have like, I think for our Instagram post, like a call to action. Like this isn't something that people can just see and be like, oh, this sucks. It's like, this sucks, but here's blank, right? Like where can we get to that? Where's the step to that? And I think those are the biggest ones for advocacy work is like, it leads to something, I guess. But yeah, it's a good question that I'd be interested to see if Dominique or Kevin have answers about, because it's like we can kind of get pulled in so many different directions, right? So I think trying to remain rooted to the idea of long-term stewardship of land, affordable housing, and commercial spaces would be my response.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Kensington is it's a little village, so it's very, the impacts are really direct, but things that are directly related to affordability, to land, encampment, the encampments, the safe injection site that has direct impacts on people's, on the community's lives, but I don't think we have a narrow focus, but I think it's partly because we're a village,
Yeah, and I think the encampment's an interesting thing where it's like you see an encampment, you might not think it's directly tied to our goal of owning land. Then you realize this is all part of the housing situation. This is all tied together, right? If we don't stand up and fight for them or speak for them, it's like these are neighbors in our community. These are a result of housing precarity. It's like these things are all tied. So your first thought would be like, oh, is that relevant? Then you realize, oh, it's all part of it, right? So that's something that I've learned too.
I also say that, like not only rooting that work in going back to first principles, as it were, going back to our mandate. I appreciate you mentioning that, but also something that Dominique in particular says all the time is that this work has legitimacy when it's rooted in our ongoing organizing work, and to some, we have a lot more legitimacy doing it when it's got those deep roots in terms of the ongoing work that we're doing, and sometimes you got to make choices about what you do, and so for me, sometimes that's about how connected is that opportunity or that issue to the work that we're doing. We've got good connections, we've got good data on that particular issue, and yeah, sometimes you got to choose your battles that way. So,
and I think too it's about filling voids too. We're in a neighborhood that has many other organizations. The safe injection site thing recently, it's like there's been a few other groups like Friends of Kensington, TNG, St. Stephen's, who've been really pushing on it really heavily. So I would say that for us, we didn't push maybe as big as we normally would. Where these other ones, it feels sometimes I'm like, if we don't say anything, no one's going to say anything, right? So I think in that space, knowing when you need to step up, because then we don't have to put so much energy in the other file. We can put tweets out, well, write letters of support, we'll sign petitions, we'll work with them when they ask us for that one, but we're not leading that one or trying to lead two things at once. We'll focus our energy elsewhere where maybe it's missing.
Sorry, I can't resist. First, thank you guys. We are from the Falls Creek South neighborhood in Vancouver. We have been organizing for like 15 years around land leases. Our land is not, we don't own it. We're leased from the city of Vancouver. The leases are ending. The city wants to tear us all down. But we have a vision for an empty parking lot. And when I saw the press release a few weeks ago, I was like, you guys, we're not crazy. We can do it. We're going to do it. So thank you, because really it was like this little injection or big injection of just like excitement and hope, at least for me. We have 2 part-time staff for our community. We call it a housing trust, a bunch of community members. I wanted to ask about kind of ongoing community engagement and almost education. So we've been doing this for a long time and we have a very stable population. We're lucky, but it's always like new people are moving in, or they go like, wait, what are you doing? Like, what are you working on? And I'm like, okay. So a huge part of our work is just like almost info sessions, office hours, coffee chats. And I'm wondering how you guys find that at the same time that you're like pushing forward on acquisition and these bigger issues. Like you mentioned a bit like the keeping rooted, but I'm wondering if you can talk more about what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, my time. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.